today, I kind of just want to go through a few things, fairly basic sort of troubleshooting with the iPad. What I've done, I've shared, and I'll share very shortly with Darren, a couple of things. There's two sheets mainly. This sheet here is kind of the run-through sheet, and also I've got, actually I'll share the sheet on the screen. This sheet here, there's a second sheet that I haven't got. It's kind of a little bit more detailed what I'm covering today, that's compared to this summary sheet. Whereas the summary sheet goes through kind of the run through today, but also links. So if I go too fast today and you want to have a look at how did I troubleshoot or how do I, fix up Wi-Fi issues, the link here will take you to the website, the iPad portal website. So I'll share those with people now. For those that want to follow along, you should now have an email. So hopefully Darren and Cheryl and Pete and Daphne should have an email coming through. What that will give you is access to this folder up here. And in that folder you've got a few basic tips, which is kind of a 3-page semi-summary of some of the things you can do. But also you'll have a PDF version of this iPad tricks and tips, which is this one. What it is, it's a PDF version. This one here, if you go, it's a Google Doc version. The nice thing about the Google Doc version is if you open it within the Google Doc app, you can click on the links and then open them up onto the iPad portal. So for example, if I want to have a look at the basic tricks and tips, this one in the general area, if I just hold my finger down on that, it gives me the option to open link, and then I can go open in Safari, and that will open up that link, so I'm not having to type in the details there. So there's the useful tips and tricks. So what I want to do today, and then have a bit of a time at the end for questions, but I want to just go through some of the basic tips and tricks, and then if you have any questions towards the end as well. The first thing I want to start off with is we try to put as much as we possibly can in this iPad portal. So if you ever get stuck, there's a section in my iPad portal. Today I'm going to be focusing in iPad use, and there's two sections that we'll be looking at. Useful iPad tricks and tips, and troubleshooting. So these are kind of the two core areas, but also if you're interested in core apps, how-to guides, you'll find some information in there that's quite worthwhile as well. So if you're focusing in Keynote or Pages and you want to know how to do a lot of the things that are happening in those areas, click on this one here, which I can show you very quickly. What it will do is give you the 5 core apps that we've had students purchase, and then click on the link. What that's going to do is take you to the Apple website. The reason why I've done that is because Apple keeps updating the software. We can't keep up with it. So by giving you a link straight to their website, that's updated instantly, so we give you access to that. So, how do you animate slides? You can do a search up here. For example, animate the slides. This will go through how to create transitions and just follow through. So there's images, and very similar to what we sort of do as well. So that's one key area that we're looking at. The other place is the iPad useful tricks and tips. And we've sort of broken this up into, well, I've broken them up into 6 sort of areas. General sort of how do you do things with the iPad. Email, if you have email, things that you can do with that. Notes, pages, calendars, reminders, maps, and Safari. So they're the key, or the 6 key areas that we look at. They will be changing shortly. So there's a new update coming out, which is going to change how the iPads work. So just be aware that this is going to change shortly. But again, if you go on here, you just go view details. You'll notice down the side gives you a sub-menu of what's covered, and things like turn off iPad email alert chimes. So every time your iPad makes a beeping sound, if you want to turn that off, there's some information in there. Preview more than one email account, turn off your iPad push buttons and things like that as well. The other area that we'll look at is troubleshooting. So in this section, basically we're looking at a few tricks and tips that you can use if you have problems. So if your iPad's frozen or unresponsive, sort of just giving you some tricks of what you can do. If you're having problems with apps, Wi-Fi not connecting at college or at home, and then some email things as well. So we're kind of going to go through some of those. Probably the main thing that we want to cover first of all is on this basic tricks and tips. Troubles again today. Start off really simple, and you guys have all had iPads for a while. I've sort of started off with turning on and off, so you guys know how to turn it on and off. The next step with that turning on and off is the rotation lock, so you probably know this as well, but I'll just go through it very quickly. This is the home button on the side here. If you double tap on the home button, scroll to the side, you'll see it's got like the very last left button here is your orientation lock. If you tap on there and tap the screen, I've unlocked it, so now whenever I rotate my screen, it'll follow me around. Which is fine if you're moving, but if you say you're reading in bed or one of those activities, double tap and you want it to lock. Same thing, now I've got a lock button on it, it's not going to rotate around. So it's a nice little tool if you are moving around quite a lot. A lot of the students too, you'll see it's got a little lock there. I find when you grab their iPad, they're always kind of going, oh, it's not, you know, they kind of shake it and put it in place. So if you do the double tap, scroll across, you can lock it. The other nice feature is this brightness screen here. So again, it's a double tap to the scroll. You won't see it up on my screen, but if you see it on my iPad, you'll see it brighten and low. Now, if I have that all the way up, and you've got the latest iPad, you'll find your iPad gets really hot, and also your battery life will shoot through. So I usually keep it about halfway mark. You can have a setting where it automatically picks that up as well, but usually I set it around the halfway, so it's nice and easy to see. You'll also see over here, these buttons here are for your iTunes. So if you've got music in your iTunes account, you can play directly from here. And what it'll do, will play the last song that you had access to. And again, you've got your volume switch here. So this is your volume here, but you've also got your volume down the bottom. You'll notice when I push it, I'm pushing it down the bottom, it's going up and down. The main area that we're going to look at is within settings. So if you want to have a look at settings now, we can go through a few things here. First of all, I'm going to jump to some troubleshooting and we might jump back. If you go to mail, one of the issues that we've been having with mail, and this is something probably more for students, if you go into class and a student says they're not getting email, there's probably a number of reasons why they're not getting email. First of all, your college account. So if you go to mail contacts, you guys can check this now, it has to be, at Reynolds College, even though it's a Gmail account, we use Gmail, it has to be an Exchange account. So if you find your Redlands College account, so in this case mine's called Redlands Google, if you tap on that once, it should come up on the left-hand side with Exchange. If it comes up with Gmail, it's not going to work 100% at school. So first thing, if the student's not getting their email at school, check that it's got Exchange. Now this is in the troubleshooting here, so let me just jump back. If you do get stuck, iPad use, troubleshooting, and then if you scroll down the bottom here, where it says email, this is where it's sort of talking about. So it's sort of saying, you know, check its default and make sure it's an Exchange. So back up here, it just talks about make sure it's making it an Exchange account. So the reason why the email doesn't work is within Redlands College, because we are a large account, we have to have an Exchange account and a Gmail account. So if it says Gmail up here, kids will need to delete that account and create a new account. By deleting that account, they don't lose their emails. It just means they're deleting it from their iPad and then making a reconnection with Exchange. It's probably easy just to send it down to IT. We can set that up for them. Send it in hand. The other thing too is really important, mail days are synced. So within this first page, no limit. By default, when you get an iPad, it sets it to 3 days. So what happens is students get their iPads, and after 3 days, they're saying, all my emails being deleted. So if they get an email on Monday, by Thursday, that Monday email's disappeared. And the reason being is that if you set it to 3 days by default, it's archiving that information. So all you need to do is tap on there and change it to no limit. By changing it to no limit, it means that they'll have access to all their emails. The other thing is that you need to have your Redlands College email account as your default. Yes, please.
So if you hit no limit and they've lost their previous emails, if you hit no limit, does it go back to all the old ones?
Yeah, correct. Yeah, you'll see. It'll probably take a bit of time, but what you'll see is it will start to auto-fill up again. Yeah. So once you've done that, it'll just start filling up. Yeah. So the kids get pretty excited when you do that for the first time. They go, oh, I haven't lost it. So, yeah. So the other really important thing is that they have to have it as a default account. So if you scroll down within the mail, you can have multiple settings here as well. So show 50 latest messages in the inbox. Really important down here, default account has to be Redlands. You'll also notice here the contacts. Probably makes the most sense to have it as your Redlands College account, or Redlands College calendar in this case. And you'll see here the contact detail of Redlands College. So by default, if you change everything to Redlands College, you won't have any issues. You'll notice in my account, I've got a few accounts. If I was to add a new account today, the iPad will automatically them as defaults. So if a student comes to school and says, I've got my Hotmail account now, by default it'll add those as default, so they have to go back and change that to Redlands College. What we are suggesting is that if they want to use a personal, Hotmail or one of those Yahoo, that they actually download the app. So I've given you a bit of information on that iPad portal where they can download the Hotmail app or the Yahoo app or the Gmail app. So how it works is that students access this email account for their schoolwork, but then they go to things like the Gmail app to access their home Gmail, or the Yahoo app, or the whatever app they want to use, Hotmail. So that sort of separates their home from school, and it also alleviates any issues that they may have. If you've got a home Gmail account, that should be fine, because of what you'll see in my account, you'll see I've got my home account and my school account. So the Google Calendar, the Google apps seem to work okay, or the Google Calendar mail apps. Okay, so that's probably the key issues with troubleshooting with the email. Email is probably one of the issues, one of the main ways of communicating. If we can get that right with our students, email works really well. The other issues that we do have is, within here again, is Wi-Fi. And probably most of you have probably had some issues with Wi-Fi over the last 3 or 4 weeks. They have been changing some settings. So over the Easter break, there was some issues before Easter. They've tried to fix those up. Those issues have seemed to become worse over this term, so they're still working through that. One of the quickest ways, if you do lose Wi-Fi, and I won't do it right now because it'll turn off the Apple TV that I'm connected to, is to turn this airplane mode on. So if I just turn it on, you'll see a little airplane pops up through here. Do that for about 10 seconds, then turn it back off again. And then what you'll see is that the Wi-Fi will start to recalibrate and rejoin. So that's probably the easiest way to reset your Wi-Fi. It's fast, it's efficient, it does the trick. If that doesn't work, the second step is to actually power down. So if you do a reset or a powered off, so by holding the power button at the top here, there's a little button, hold that down for about 3 seconds, and you'll see it slide the power off. Sliding the power off there, it's just like turning off your computer. It powers it off, so start, shut down, those sort of things. You're turning off all power, there's nothing running in the background. Normally when you finish with an iPad, the way this works, you just tap the power button here, it's asleep, like hibernation mode, but when you come back, it's instantly on. Where by holding your finger down for 3 seconds, it's powering it off. The other trick, if that doesn't work, and this is a handy tool, is if you hold down the power and the home button for over about 3 seconds, that'll then do a restart. What I call a hard restart is if you hold the power and the home button for longer than 3 seconds, you hold it until you see the little Apple symbol come up. So I won't do it now because I'll drop out of my connection. But if you hold that down, it's probably about 10 seconds or so, you'll see a little Apple symbol, let go. What that does is really cleans out the iPad. So whenever you open up an app, what's happening is the app opens up and then it's leaving little fragments of data. And over a period of time, that data builds up and you might find it starts to slow down. By doing a hard reset or power off once a week, I suggest probably like on a Friday, it just cleans that little bits of data that's been chunked up each day and clears it up, speeds everything up. And you'll notice too, double tapping will bring up the multitask bar, and you'll see kids when they come to class, or they'll scroll backwards and forwards and they'll see multiple apps. So because those apps are open, even though they're not running presently, they are using a little bit of memory, a little bit of data. So if you remember that each one of these is open, it is using a bit of power. So if a student opens up a document and they're having issues with it, or the program's not running, or the app's not running perfectly, make sure they don't have too many of these open. So again, the easiest way to close those apps, double tap, hold your finger down, let it shimmer, and then just tap on each one to close it. Just go through and close it. There's no way to actually do it manually. You have to do it manually each one. You can't do it in one hit. But that will fix up a lot of those issues. And then once a week, again, power off. And the reason why we power off is just to clear out some of that memory all that data that's being stored on the iPad as well. Is there any sort of questions on that side of stuff? So the Wi-Fi is a bit of an issue, but if you try that, airplane mode off, airplane on, and then off again, that usually fixes it and makes the connection. The way the Apple TVs work is through the Wi-Fi. So if I was to drop out on my Wi-Fi now, the Apple TV won't connect. So if it drops out with the Apple TV as well, even though you've got Wi-Fi but Apple TV's turned off, do the airplane mode on and off again, and that usually fixes it as well. The other main issues that we come across is within an app. So if an app becomes locked up, the easiest thing to do is, say for example, I am working with Google Drive, and I can't do anything with it, it's sort of not moving. If you can, again, hit the home button to close it. By closing it, it's now available down here. If, for instance, I've got the Google Drive open, double tap on the home button, you'll see it's not here. I can't close it because it's still being viewed. So if I tap the home button to close it, double tap, hold my finger down, hit it there, then open it up again. So if I close that, then I open that up again. If that hasn't fixed it, you'll see it refreshes it. So front screen. And I'll show you what that means. So let's say I'm working on this document here. So Professional Learning Sessions. Okay. So right now I'm looking at this document that I've created for you. Well, that was last week's. If I hit the home button, all it's going to do is put it down the bottom. It's still awake, it's still sort of running. If I tap on that again, it's going to take me back exactly where I was. If this time I close it, what you'll see now is when I open up Google Drive, it'll go back to the start, so it's taken that away. So if you want to be able to access documents multiple times, don't power down or don't close that app down the bottom from the multitask bar. But if you're having troubles, that's the best way to do it. So you close it down from the bottom, and that restarts that app. The other thing you can do too between apps is use your 4 fingers to scroll between pages. I don't know if you've seen that before. You can use your fingers to pinch to close the apps as well. So you can do things like it's 4 fingers up. If you don't like the double tapping, so tap tap will bring it up, or 4 fingers up will bring it up. You can also do 4 fingers across the page to turn pages. So 2 fingers will just do the single page, 4 fingers will do your pages turning across. Which can be quite useful for students if they're working on a document. Next page, go back, that's where I was working on. So, and that basically follows what the toolbars are here. So if I open up Google Drive, then you'll see Mail, Safari, Settings, Keynote. So if I go there, next page, Mail, Safari, Settings. So it follows that motion as well. So one of the big ones that we have a lot of issues with is the iPad backups as well. And I'll just go through the iPad backups. There's 2 methods that you can choose. Now, on the iPad portal, we've created its own section. So if you go to iPad Setup, and if you go to iPad Backup, this covers the backup process. There's 2 ways you can back up. The first way is via iCloud, and the second way is via iTunes on your computer. So the iCloud backup is setting your iPad to back up to a cloud or internet, basically. The cloud is internet. So what you're doing is making a copy of this iPad and storing on a closed account on the internet. So what it means is you don't need to have a computer. You can access it from anywhere in the world as long as you've got a Wi-Fi connection. And it's a secure backup, so no one else can access it unless they have your password. And the way I believe it's set up is that it's not necessarily going to one physical place. It's split up over multiple locations, and then it pieces it back together when you put it together. So it's quite clever how they do it. So if you ever were to break into our network system here and stole one of our network drives, in effect you take all that information and have access to all that information. The way Google Drive does it, because they're a global company, if you were to break into one of their massive storage areas, steal some of their drives, you'd only get bits and pieces, and it's all algorithms and things like that as well, so you wouldn't be able to crack it because you need the whole system. So in some ways like that, it's quite a secure way of storing data. And the way that it works is that it makes a copy of anything on your iPad. So if you do an iPad backup, If you set it up correctly, what it does is it makes a copy of any changes that you've made to those documents that you've created. So it recognises that you've got these apps. It doesn't back up the apps, it just says you've got this app, this app, this app. But then what it does is looks, okay, I've got Pages app, and I've got these documents. The first backup will back up everything, so all your documents you've created. The next day when you go home, back it up, it's going to back up only changes. So how it works is when you plug it in, it gives you a bit of instructions within the settings. If you go to iCloud, so within settings, iCloud, storage and backup, and you'll notice here it says automatically back up your camera roll, accounts, documents and settings when this iPad is plugged in, locked and connected to Wi-Fi. So you notice here yesterday it backed up at 4:09 AM for mine. So at night I plugged mine in to charge it overnight. Because I've got Wi-Fi at home, it automatically must pick a time when it's fairly quiet on the Wi-Fi network, well not Wi-Fi but the internet, and then does it back up. So all it's doing is going through, it does a scan of my iPad and says here's some changes that's happened, I'm going to back those changes up. How it works then is if this iPad was lost or I suddenly dropped in the pool or lost it, I could better get a brand new iPad or another iPad, and when I sign up for that iPad and make the connections, all I do is go instead of creating a new account or creating a new iPad, I'd go to restore from the backup. I put in my Apple ID and password, and then over a period of 4 to 6 hours, what it's going to do is pull all that information from the internet and put it onto my iPad. And the iPad looks exactly the same as what it looked like the day before. So this iPad I got at the start of this year looked exactly the same as what I had last year on my old iPad when I moved up with the new plan. So that's kind of the backup is probably the easiest way to do it. The reason being is that it's that simple. I plug it in at night, I don't have to think about it, it backs up every night automatically. It's not using a lot of internet speed or data because all it's doing is backing up the changes. So I haven't made any changes today, it's just backing up, it just does 30 seconds, scans it, nothing's changed, it's backed up. If I create a new keynote or anything like that, it'll back that up and save it. And what you can do is have a look. So I've updated my storage. By default you get 5 gig free. You can pay a little bit extra. So I've got the next extra 10 gig, which works out about $21 a year, which gives me 15 gig. You'll notice here I've got 3.3 gig left. If I tap on my managed storage, you'll see I'm backing up my iPad, I'm backing up my iPhone, and I'm backing up Elisa's, not her iPhone, but it's my old phone that she uses. So you can see this is where the 3 are being used. You'll also notice in my backups, this is how much data. Remember I had 15 gig. This is what's taking up the most space.
Can you choose what it backs up?
Yeah, and I'll show you how you can do that as well.
So for example, your keynote there, which is in the gigabytes, if I chose not to back up keynotes, I could get rid of.
Yeah, and you can delete directly from here as well. I can swipe my finger from left to right and delete my keynotes. But for example, if I go back to my iCloud, so let's go storage and backup, manage storage, and this is across all devices. But if I go, let's go my iPad, I only want to back up, I don't want to back up Keynote on my iPad. So I can now go through here, show all apps, and you'll notice too it gives you, the one that has the most size will be closer to the top. So iBooks, 5.8 gigs, so I can turn that off because it was too big. So you can just turn those off. So if you scroll down here, you'll see all my apps.
I was about to say your iPad's got a lot of apps.
Yeah, so that's all my apps that I'm on my iPad. So if I was to delete, Tweet Glass off my iPad, then that wouldn't show. So these are the apps. I've got a 64 gig app on here. I do a lot of testing, and so there's a lot of apps here that you probably don't need to have. But because I'm jumping in and out all the time, so my iPad, even though it's a 64 gig iPad, you'll notice my backup size is only 5 gig. But if you have a look, so it's backing up 5 gig worth of data, but if I go to general and then go to usage, this will tell you how much space I'm being used. I've used up 56 gig on my iPad. So even though it's only backing up 5 gig, it's again, what it's doing is looking for those changes. So it's not backing up any store or data. So things like Google Earth that use up a lot of memory, it's not backing up that data because that data's here, it's just looking for changes in your documents. So that's a quick way to find out what sort of storage you've got. If you go to general, usage, that will tell you your storage. But yeah, I'll go back. So the iCloud, so when you get into iCloud, you just need to have an account. So by default, most people will just use their Apple ID account, which is the easiest way to do it. So that's my Apple ID account. You'll see when you tap on it, you can sign in, username, give it a description. You'll see here mine says 10 gig because I paid the extra for it. And then really, gives you this default, you can choose which apps you want backed up. Can I suggest you always do documents and data? That's the key one because that'll back up your pages, keynotes and numbers, those 3 apps. Find My iPad's a great one to have too. So if you do lose your iPad, my daughter left her iPad here last Tuesday at school and I thought, oh, I couldn't find it, we had left it in a rush. So what I was able to do was use my Find My iPad, log in under her Apple ID and password, and it gave me like a data location where that was. So it gives you the map of the school and I can see it was in her classroom. So I can sort of, whew, that's good, I didn't leave it in the car somewhere or left it somewhere else. So that's a really handy tool and there's an app that goes with that. And it's great, I can show you how it works if you like. So it's called Find iPhone. What it should do, so I've just found here. The tools are there. So this is it here. So this is Elisa's iPad now. So she should be at after school care. So if I zoom in too far.
It's good to see that she's not in middle school.
So middle school, sorry, after school care is here, so it's fairly close. But if I tap on here, I can do a number of things. I can play a sound. So you know when you lose your keys in the house, you can play a sound, you can find the iPad. You can lock it, so it means you put a passcode lock on it, so if someone has stolen it, they can't access it, they can't put in the passcode, or you can erase the iPad as well. So if you know it's well and truly gone, you have the ability to erase everything, so it just replace the iPad. Which gives them a nice new iPad and they're ready to go, but you can erase it, lock it, or play sound. So I've done each one of those. The thing is you need to know their Apple ID and password. You turn that on, it's a really handy tool. So Find My iPad, and then there's an app called Find My iPad. It's a free app, you download that, and then it's just a matter of using your Apple ID and password. And that's a very handy tool. Now the other option with the backup is via iTunes on a computer. Now this is the older way of doing it. It still works well. If you don't have Wi-Fi at home, it's still a good option. The way it works is you plug in your iPad with the cable, pops up iTunes, and then it's just a matter of going to backup. Now, there are some options. So there's just a screen grab of what it will look like. There are some options where you can encrypt the local backup, which looks like an encryption, so it makes it very hard for other people to access it and make sense of it. It's like a security password. We've found when people have done that, they've forgotten their password, and if you forget your password, there's nothing we can do. Because it is encrypted, unless you know that password, it doesn't work. So unless you're really serious about your security, I would probably just go back up from this computer. Again, you can back it up now. If you lose your iPad or something happens to it and you get a new iPad or a replacement iPad, you hit this restore, you plug it in, it pops up here, you go restore backup. When you click restore backup, it will drop down a menu and it'll say which iPad. So if I've got multiple iPads, it'll tell me which one, and it'll have the latest 2 or 3 backups, and then you choose which backup you want. Again, that'll take a couple of hours, and that will back it up. The other thing you can do is set this up so that it syncs with your iPad over Wi-Fi. So that's another sort of setting which will allow you, so when you walk into your home, and let's say you've got a computer that has iTunes running all the time, and you've got your iPad and you've got the same Wi-Fi network, you can come home and that will automatically start syncing with it if your computer's up and turned on. So it's similar to the iCloud, but it's in your home setting. And it needs to be within the same Wi-Fi network. So you can set it up by ticking that box. You walk home, put your iPad down, the iPad's turned on, your computer's turned on, it'll start to back up. My experience is it doesn't work as well as the iCloud backup. We've had a lot of issues with students with backing up to iTunes as well. If you change your computer, there's a lot of issues with that. If your computer dies, you've lost your backup, you've got to redo the backup, there's issues with that as well. So, as far as backing up is concerned, I would suggest, if at all possible, you go to the iCloud. I haven't had any issues with the iCloud. As long as you've got one Apple ID for all the apps you've purchased, that's the best way to do it. We have come across some students that are sharing Apple IDs. The problem with that is that when this student updates, backs up, you run out of space very quickly because there's two devices going. If, for instance, they are using iPad for their documents, so what it's doing is doing a backup. Student A deletes student B's work because they said, oh, that's not my work. It deletes it for everyone. So if you think of it, even though it's connected to one area, it's very much like Google Docs. If someone deletes that document, it deletes it from all devices straight away. We have had some students as well have issues with their PDF Expert, which is probably one of the main apps that we use here at the college as well. If you find that PDF Expert ever locks up, so here's my document today. If you find I can't do anything, it won't let you scroll, it won't let you do anything like that, you can't access it, you do the close, double tap, you close it this way, you open it up, it still opens up to that document, you can't do anything. The way that you can fix it is if you go to my email and then go open in, or you can even do that with pages of Keynote, so let's go Keynote. If I go share and print, open in, another app, and I'm going to go PDF. So this will convert to a PDF, and then what it will do, let me open open in PDF Expert. For some reason, it kicks the other. See, it opens up automatically. It opens. So the other document that I had access wasn't allowing me. If I go back to Documents, scroll down to that document, there it is. It'll let you open it, but what you can do straight away is just go email that document, send by email, go flatten copy. The flatten copy, we choose flatten copy because what it does is a standard copy will just send a blank document. The flatten copy, what it will do is go, here's your document, here's all the annotation that the students put over it, and we're going to put it on one layer. So what it'll do is send that as an email, and then what you need to do is once you've sent that email, open that up, and then open up a PDF Expert, and it seems to overwrite the issue that it was having. So what it means is the students' annotations are there, but then the blank stuff is still there as well. What you can't do is then make any changes to the students' annotations previously. So does that sort of make sense? Yeah. So we had a number of students, and it seemed to be students that had large textbooks, so to speak, or large files that teachers had sent them. And sometimes too they lock up because of the size of them. The students use them every day. There were issues, so some students just lock up and couldn't do anything. So if we did that step, it sort of fixed that issue. So probably if you are creating PDF documents, it might be an option to have smaller, break it up even smaller again, week by week or topic by topic. So this class that we're looking at had basically the terms work in one booklet, which was a bit of a hassle because it worked well, but students were accessing it every day, putting a lot of data, a lot of information. So by the end of the term, we're having issues with the size and kids were running out of space because they had other things going on as well. So if you package it into smaller chunks, still all accessible. And the thing with PDF Expert is that you can create folders. And if you're keen to, now the latest update, you can now save to the iCloud as well. So
Top of your screen.
hey,
No, to control that one.
now you notice too. Do you see that one had a little star on it?
Yeah.
So I've had emails coming through. See, it's got 7 emails. I've set it so that only really important people, VIPs, get through. So normally I'd have all my emails showing, but because she's a VIP, she gets a pop up on the screen. You can turn off the notifications. So within notifications of the settings bar, if you go down to mail, you'll notice here, see, most of these have badges, sounds and banners. So within mail, I've turned that all off. What is a badge or a banner? I'll just click on my Red College one. So this is a banner which was up the top. So mine was a banner that's popped up. Alerts go up on the screen, so they flash in the middle. You can also have this badge app icon. The badge app icon is that number 7. So that tells me I've got 7 emails. You'll also notice here I've got one Bible ready to. So that just gives you that warning. So I can turn that on. You'll also see here what I've done is I've got none, but I've set it up even though it's none by default because I've got my narrator as a starred person, a VIP. So within, you'll notice I've got little stars next to her, so she'll always pop up as important VIP. So it always pops. It overrides everything else. So, you know, there's my Bible, there's TED Talks, there's my mail.
Yeah.
So if I was to turn off, let's go notifications, if I go into TED, and then I turn off TED here, if I turn that notifications off, I'm pretty sure I've lost the TED.
Sweet.
Yeah, so you have to go through and manually turn off the notification center for each one. So that's my TED. I've turned off the notification center. Probably go none, so then it pops up. Sounds, you on the screen. Turn them off as well. And therefore they won't get any mail or messages